If you anything pops up, it's on your mind, let me know.
Oh, you got a fellow Virginian there, Bill.
That's right. That's very good. Beth, I'm down in Williamsburg, Virginia. New Hampshire. Wow, this is fun. I wish I had known to do this before.
I know I've had more caffeine today than the last time, Bill, so I'm crisper in my.
Well, there's good news. It just the 2 cups of coffee for you have health benefits, as they say. Of course, 2 years from now, they will tell you that it increases the risk of going crazy or something. Oh, Lynchburg. Ah, yes.
Oh, we got a Wichita up there.
Ah, I lived in Wichita for 2 years. Sounded felt like it was 20, but I was there for 2 years with Pizza Hut.
I didn't realize Pizza Hut was in Wichita.
That's where it was founded. Wichita is one of the most innovative, entrepreneurial places in the world. Residence Inn started there. Pizza Hut started there. Uh, don't remind me, but the Koch brothers are there. And it's just an incredibly a rich center for entrepreneurial adventures.
Wow. Oh, another Alabama. White
Very good.
relationship. Great. We're getting real close to our 10:30 start time. I've got another minute left on my clock. Um, Last time we had a bunch of folks jump on right on or after the 10:30 mark, but we do want to honor everyone's time today and the time that Bill needs to present this content. This is going to be a deeper dive into the content, taking it to the next level from part one. Bill will be giving us a bit of an overview of part one from those who may have missed it or those who are looking to have some of those points just tied together for you. Regarding Bill Holland, for those of you who missed the initial introduction, he is a Spartan, a great Spartan, and I actually heard an NPR interview that Bill gave, and as he speaks, I can't be the only one with the opinion that he just has this very engaging voice, and I really enjoyed his perspective on the content relating to shifts in the job market and the things that really need to be the focus now for those who are going to be successful. So Bill is an author. He wrote the book that the content from this two-part series is pulled from, Cracking the New Job Market. Many of you have that, some through their library, some through purchase. The logo for that is down below. He's also written, Are There Any Good Jobs Left? Career Management in the Age of the Disposable Worker. A lot of people have very real feelings about that. And is currently working on a new book related to career readiness at graduation, and really feeling the need to help parents and students help to make that education experience translate into uh, a marketable spot and a marketable outcome for employment. Bill has a lot of experience in the private sector. He's worked for Chase Manhattan Bank, PepsiCo. He's also been with universities, the University of California in Riverside, Pennsylvania. So he's been involved in a lot of consulting type situations, been on the leading edge of globalization in the role of Chief Human Resource Officer for Anderson Consulting's Business Process Outsourcing Division. We are very fortunate to have this kind of access to Bill. And for those of you who have participated in part one, Bill did offer a 1 hour Q&A session this past Monday over the noon hour. We're going to do that again next Monday. And I just would like to extend a very warm welcome to Bill. I'm going to turn it over to you and say thank you for this time that you're giving to our Spartan family.
Well, thanks a lot, Lisa, again. And let me begin this session by saying that my credentials mean absolutely nothing unless I'm able to bring you something of value. And so I understand that it is not about me, but rather it's about you and what you may need from me to find traction in the job market. And if there is one rule about the new job market, it's that when you apply for a job, when you build your resume, it's not about you. It's about what people want from you. And if you understand that and how to act accordingly, you will begin to be more powerful in the marketplace. And that's hard for me to say much more than that. Let me also say that there were a number of questions that kept coming up between the last week and this week about the resume, and it came at me in a couple of ways. One was, what's the first thing I need to do? And I put it that way because it was clear to me that there are some people out there that understand the concept but aren't quite sure how to apply it. Look, when you are looking for a job, the first thing you need to ask is this a job for which I can become a reasonable candidate? And number two, what are they asking of the person who fills that job? Once you understand that, it is an empowering methodology because it frees you up to focus on what is of value to the employer. And if you learn how to do that effectively, you'll be much, much better off. So do that. The other question that keeps coming up is, should I hire a resume service? The answer is, if you don't have the skill set to make your resume look pretty, and I'm one of those. I mean, I am not very good at putting a resume together. So if I really wanted to put one together, I would, to make it look pretty, I probably would get some help doing that. But I darn sure would not hire someone to determine the content. What I would do is I would, through hook, nook, or crook, go out and get a copy of this book, Cracking the New Job Market, and figure out what needs to go in your resume based on what jobs you are after. And then if you think you still need some support around that, go get it. But a resume service, you'll know whether or not a resume service has any value. But when you ask them the question, talk to me a little bit about how you go about putting my resume together. And what they usually say is, well, we'll understand your background and we'll do this and we'll do that. And then nowhere in there are they likely to say, what I'm going to help you to figure out is what's on the mind of the employer and how you can speak to that, to your most effective best. If you find a resume service that understands that, they should be in the business of outplacement counseling, not writing resumes. So anyway, enough of that. Let me move on. Lisa, I'm looking for the how to move the slide. Oh, I see it. I got it. All right. Let me just go through a quick overview. We talked about why is the job market new, kind of what's going on. One, it's a global market, and that doesn't mean you should run out and read Chinese, learn Chinese. It's also a market that is dominated by technology. That does not mean you yourself have to be a high-tech person. All it means is that you at least need to understand how technology is impacting the market. And believe me, it is. Because it brought a lot of new players and suppliers, not new players as suppliers and buyers into the marketplace. That is both globalization and technology, because work can be done any place in the world. And the addition of Russia, China, um, and India and Brazil into the job market added well over 1.47 billion new people to the job market in terms of being job seekers. And many of these people are highly educated workers who are willing to work for a lot less money. So it's not going to do any of us here in the United States much good to try to compete on price. That's just not going to work for us. And what I'm suggesting is an alternative is that you compete on value. And how do you compete on value? You find out what the employer is looking to accomplish with the job they're filling and give that to them in your application. And this condition is a more or less permanent condition, a condition of fierce competition in the job market. So you're going to need to be competitive to survive. And I think that all makes sense. If it doesn't, ask some questions and we'll go from there. The new rules is that your resume is not about you. It's about what others want from you. And so a part of what you need to do is to focus on all aspects of what they want. And you do that in your resume, in all parts of the application, and what we're going to talk about in a moment, and in the interview. For me, this is the most frustrating part because people really get nervous. And I'm going to talk to you about how to get rid of some of that nervousness. And then, of course, you describe your experiences and background in the terms, in the language that the employer uses to describe the problem they're trying to solve. And ask as many questions about that as you can. We also learned how to build that value into your resume. We talked a little bit about using social media and that looking for a job is a contact sport. You could be a very powerful presenter of your resume. You increase your chances of connecting many-fold by learning how to use social media effectively. And I encourage people to start with LinkedIn, and I'm sure there are a lot of other websites out there and groups that I don't know about. You're not going to learn it all, but so get out there. Okay, here's our agenda for today. We're going to talk about preparing for interviews, a little bit about managing gaps in employment, how to go about coaching your references, and the message there will be, don't be shy. Coach them and help them give you the kind of recommendation that you need from them. My favorite topic, negotiating job offers, and then a little more about ongoing career management. Now, on preparing for interviews. If you have in fact done what has been recommended, that is, you looked at the position description, you visited the website, you have in fact listed your experiences, and you've begun to ask yourself the question, what have I done that links to what they are asking me to do? And more, and just as important, how do I go about articulating that? How what are kind of like the key words if I'm in that interview and those words come out, I'll know, whammo, that means that relates to these experiences that I've done, and I know how to talk about that. And the reason that preparing for interviews is good news for you if you've done that is because you've already prepared. You are miles ahead of most people, because the same method that you use to prepare for interviews is the one you use to build your resume. And the rules are exactly the same. It's not about you. So you got to go in there. Think of the interviewer as a child. that comes to you crying, they've scraped their knee, they got all kinds of problems, the last thing on your mind at that point in time, especially if you're a parent, is yourself. You're not absorbed with you. You are absorbed with what that person needs from you. And I got to tell you, companies are screaming out to solve problems right now. I don't know if, I mean, Walmart has gotten to be so bad, I have no idea if they're going to be able to survive. I don't know if any of you have tried to buy tires from Walmart or batteries. Their service is just terrible. And they can't back up their the warranty that they have for their job. That you go in, and this is the third time this has happened to me. You go in and you say, this battery is under warranty. I'd like to have you look at it and tell me if it needs to be replaced. And then you go through the replacement process. It's much easier just to pay the extra amount that you have to pay at another more reliable place. They can't keep and retain good people. And on a store-wide level, in some stores, obviously I have not been to all stores, the management doesn't care. So somehow, whether if you can work your way through into Walmart and convince decision makers that you care and that you can do, I got to tell you, they're looking for you. So it is really tough out there. Finding good people is still very hard. So interviews are not about you. It's the same as in your resume. It's about what others want from you. And you need to figure out what that is and give it to them. 3 parts to an interview. And the great thing about this methodology is that there is very little memorization. There are some books, and if this works for you, use the memory route. I can't remember all those things, but there are books that are, the answers to the 100 most difficult interview questions you'll ever get. Well, if that's what you want to do, if that's how you want to spend your time, fine. I happen not to be a big believer in that particular approach. It has some limited value, but I wouldn't waste my time on it unless you just have all the time in the world. But the 3 parts are accepted protocols. We'll talk a little bit about that. What are the different kinds of interviews you're going to encounter? That happens to be very important because it will keep you from being thrown off guard. Because sometimes you'll go into an interview and you were operating on one set of assumptions, and you'll find that they have a whole different interview structure. And you need to understand, you need to be able to say, oh yeah, I know, I read about that. I even know what it takes to win in a situation like this. And then there are some, I should have put tough in quotation marks, because once you think about them, they're not tough at all. But they're tough questions made easy. So those are the 3 parts to preparing for interviews that I want to go over with you. Accepted protocols. Now, I put this in initially, and I said to myself, do you really have to tell someone who is going for a job interview to be on time? And what I found out is you really do. I have interviewed at some very good universities, and I'm shocked at the casualness with which the students treated the interview process. They were anywhere from 3 to 15 minutes late. Now, the being on time has a special kind of meaning to it. If you are in a new town and you're not sure of the route to the interview, do a trial run if the opportunity presents itself. What I usually do is I get there anywhere from a half hour to 45 minutes ahead of time. I don't go to the interview site. I hang around and have some coffee, so I don't have to rush to get into the interview 10 to 15 minutes before I'm due there. Talk a little bit about dress and protocol. The over 50 crowd. You can't dress as if you are back in the 70s or 80s. Understand what the norms are relative to dress and go in there in the garb that they expect you to be dressed in. There are some places where the dress is business casual, but that's for people who already work there. And their expectation is that you'll come to the interview in a business suit. There are other places, especially in the Silicon Valley, if you show up in a business suit, I've seen places that are so insistent on this, you may not get in because they take their environment very seriously, and they don't want everybody to know you're there for an interview. Number one, and number two, even the CEO dresses in blue jeans. So you ask someone, what is the appropriate attire for someone who is interviewing? Find out what that is, and then go do it. Notice I didn't say ask them whether or not this is a business casual environment, because the dress of what's appropriate for employees may be slightly different from what is appropriate for people who are there interviewing. If it's not fun, but at least find that out. And then what to take to the interview. And I put down here, keep it simple. The one thing you want to avoid is looking into some big briefcase and rustling around to find the documents that you want, because it gives the appearance of being something less than fully organized, and you do not want to give that appearance. Organized and streamlined are the words of the day. If you got one, take a black leather portfolio, 2 ballpoint pens. Why 2? Well, in case one doesn't work. Extra copies of your resume and a list of references. Now, in most interviews, you won't be asked for that list of references. But in the event you are asked, it would be very interesting to be able to say, yes, I have brought a list of references with me. It further contributes to that I'm organized, I can present myself in a streamlined manner, and I can do this job or any other job you ask me to do. This is where looking the part becomes important. So if there are any questions on that, let me know, and we can go over a little more detail.
Bill, we did
talk
get
about
a real
coaching.
We did get a real quick question on the attire.
Yes.
Just in terms, when you're seeking out the opinion of somebody on what is appropriate, are we asking somebody in the organization? Where are we getting that opinion from? And how do we know if that's the person's opinion that we want to trust?
That is another one of the. I'm always pleased with this crowd because you ask such terrific questions. Because there is a danger in that. The best place to get the answer is from the Human Resources Department and or the hiring manager. Let me know what's most appropriate in terms of how I should show up at the interview in terms of dress. Is it okay if I wear a business suit? Should I wear a dress that's more, whatever. But you get it from the source, or as close to the source as you possibly can. I would be extremely reluctant to rely on an employee or someone who's not close to the source, who isn't the source themselves. So I would just make sure of that, because you can be led astray. Oh, they don't really care how you dress. Your dress is not very important. Well, it might be. That could be someone on their way out. You don't know. So that's a good question, and it's important. Let's talk about coaching your references. The biggest mistake that people make here is they ask someone, will you give me a reference? And they'll say, sure. That's not the question. Are you in a position to give me a strong reference? Most people, when confronted with that question, understand two things immediately. They understand what you want from them. It's like a sale. If you don't ask for the sale, you're not going to get it. So you need to ask, are you in a position to give me a strong reference? The second thing they know is exactly whether or not they are on the spot. And if you see them hesitate, don't withdraw your question or withdraw the opportunity to give them a reference. Graciously accept what they are saying to you, and then when the time comes, have them on the list of backup references, not your main references. And I'll get to the backup in a minute. But if they hesitate, hold them in reserve, because a strong, or I should say a weak reference is a huge red flag. And you say, well, don't I want someone who's going to be honest? Yeah, you want someone who honestly thinks a lot of you. That's what you're looking for. You're not looking for someone who thinks you're a jerk or an idiot, or someone who thinks isn't sold on your accomplishments giving you a reference. So be careful who you ask, and ask if you can give me a strong reference. If they hesitate, don't say, oh, that's all right. No, don't do that.
Bill?
Say, thank you. I'm not, yeah?
We actually have a question too. Do you think you're able to gauge hesitation through things like a request through email for a reference, or are you wanting to have these conversations face to face or over the phone?
The references, references are best handled face to face or over the phone. And given the virtual world we live in, face to face may not be possible. So if it's not face to face and you don't have a chance to hear their voice or see them, it's a little bit of a crapshoot. So here is the rule. The better you know a person, and the more you are convinced that they are in your corner, the more risk you take in allowing that question to be a remote question or an email question. It's a risk management issue. If you are very comfortable, I know some people that if you go on my website, you see the two people who gave me references in the video that I put up. I didn't need to see them face to face. I know these people. I've worked with them. And furthermore, they're the kind of people that say, Bill, I really wouldn't feel comfortable doing that. And they would tell me right out. So I know those people, and I didn't need to see them face to face to get that recommendation. But the less you know, the less risk you should take. See them face to face. There are a couple of exceptions to that. One are people on university campuses. If you've had a good interaction with them, most people know what it is to give a student reference, and that they have not likely worked with you in a close encounter. So it's okay to take a little more risk in that situation. But by and large, I would say the less you know them, the less you should rely on non-direct communication. Okay? All right. Now, when you coach, and I have found this very, 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 very helpful. You went through that position description, and you've written your resume, and you're now preparing for interviews. And so you go to your coach, and you're the person who's going to provide the reference, and you say, I happen to know they are particularly interested in people who have political savvy, or who are good project managers, or whatever the requirements are. Are you in a position to comment on any of my accomplishments in this area? And what I'll do is I'll send you a document, a document that will refresh your memory about some of the things I've done in this area. That really takes them off the hook, because they don't have to create it as much. And people are usually very happy to get that kind of help from you. What you're trying to avoid are lukewarm, warm references. They hurt your chances. And why is pretty obvious. Almost nobody today gives lukewarm references. And so it's getting to the point to where people are relying less and less on references. But what happens if you get one in, they say, well, you know, he's or she's pretty good at this, but whatever. And you need to be careful, because when you get one of those, while a great reference may not help you as much as you would like, a lukewarm reference will hurt you more than you want. And so, to the extent, go ahead, Lisa.
Sorry, I asked, and I'm cutting you off, and I didn't mean to, but also from the flip side, we have a number of older workers that are being told they're overqualified for things, and sometimes it's the references that are maybe overselling them as great leaders when the roles they're applying for now are more in support roles, perhaps. And I was just wondering if you could comment on that at all.
Yeah, I just had that the other day. I had a person who worked for me in a fairly senior capacity, who had fallen on hard times in this new job market. I mean, the old type of job just weren't there. And so he was taking a job as an individual contributor. And I had to stop myself to remember that the job he was applying for was an individual contributor job. And I almost blew it. And that's one where he would have done a lot better to have coached me. Here's the kind of job I'm applying for. I'm not applying for the job you knew me in. I'm applying for an individual contributor job. And so again, that's one of the things you would want to point out as you begin to coach your references. You're trying to get the type of recommendation you need, not a series of statements about what a great senior level manager you are now that you're applying for an individual contributor job. That's an area fraught with danger. And a lot of us in this new economy are downwardly mobile. And when I say downwardly mobile, I don't necessarily mean in our pay necessarily, because if you can manage the granddaddy of all skills, I predict you'll be able to recover your income over time pretty successfully. So I think the money's there. You're just positioned differently to get it. Okay, different kinds of interviews. And I only bring these up so you won't be surprised. There is obviously the traditional one-on-one interview, and that is going to be the most common. And you can pretty well count on that being the case. There is the over the lunch or over dinner interview. It's not a social event. You are still in the interview. And there are some do's and don'ts. Clearly, do whatever you think is appropriate. But I never drink alcohol at lunch in an interview. And for dinner, what I'll do is I'll take the lead of the most senior person at the table. And largely will only drink wine and then only one glass. You need to be on your best behavior, and alcohol dulls the senses. So that's my recommendation. Do what you want to do. I'm just saying, if you want to play it safe, that's the way to play it safe. There is the, and incidentally, I don't know if you've ever been to one of these before or not, but I have. And that's where you have in front of you more silverware than you've ever seen at a setting in your life. And you have no idea. I remember one time I had a finger bowl. And I said to myself, what am I supposed to do with this? And it was one of those things where you dip your fingers in it and wash it off on the, and thank goodness I didn't drink it. But I could have. I mean, I got to tell you, I didn't grow up with a silver spoon in my mouth and haven't eaten off of silver in a long time. I didn't know. And by and large, without overdoing it, it is okay to say you don't know. Just, or you can watch everybody else. You don't have to drink anything. Generally speaking, silverware is arranged from the outside. Use that first in. And that will get you by in most situations. Anything more formal than that, you're just on your own. But, don't panic. Be careful. It's okay not to know. The presentation interview. This is the best because you're standing up in front and you are giving a presentation usually on a subject you know a great deal about. And it's a much easier situation to control than others. And usually you'll know if in fact you're expected to present. Here is a danger in that. There will often be an individual in the crowd who is totally obnoxious, who insists on interrupting you, asking questions that are intended to trip you up. Sit back, give them, largely this is true, not completely, give them the platform. Everybody else in the room knows the person is an idiot. And from time to time say, I'd like to really get back to the interview, and some of them may insist on just throwing you off your game. Your job at that point in time is to get through as much of the interview as you can and to stay under control. Notice I said under control, not in control. It's their interview. It's not about you. And they may have planned it, though I think this is awfully sinister. Someone in the crowd just to see how you handle that. And the answer is you get through as much of the interview as you can. Everyone else will know either that person's an idiot or they are there to disrupt. And your job is to remain cool. Group confrontations, and many of you have seen this. That's a situation in which they say to you, here's the position I want you to argue. And your job is to convince the rest of the group that you have the best position. But at the same time, to make sure the group accomplishes something. Winning in that environment isn't getting your point of view adopted. Winning is being in support of the group and being a positive contributor to the process. And at the end, if your position isn't adopted, you give it the, hey, we got a position, let's go with it, and let's try to make this work for everybody. That is the winning combination. So you should not feel under any pressure to make sure your point of view wins the day. The name of that game is contribute to the overall process. Then there's one other called good cop, bad cop. And that's where two people will interact with you. One will say something intended to provoke. Another will come in and sympathize with you to see if you say something stupid about the person who just said something that's intended to provoke. The classic is, gee, you came all this way to interview for this job? I heard it's already filled. Well, if that happens, your job is to go through with the interview and not even respond to that. And just keep on going. You don't need to say, well, we'll see. You don't need to do any of that. Just play it straight. And don't be casual with the off-the-cuff remarks. So those are the different kinds of interviews. There are a couple of others that are worth mentioning. Telephone interviews in a quiet place that's uncluttered so you can think. If you have to put someone on a speakerphone, or you think that's desirable, it is best to be off the speakerphone, have the receiver up to your ear, and get permission from the person to put them on the speakerphone. Say, look, I would like to be able to write. Would you mind terribly if I put you on speakerphone? And then when you do so, ask them about the quality of the reception. Is the reception, now that you're on a speakerphone, okay? It shows courteousness, concern for the other person. If there is static in the line or whatever have you, it gives you an opportunity to get back and pick the receiver up so they hear you and nothing else becomes the issue. It's just a matter of common courtesy. But you don't want a situation in which you're interrupted all the time. And then the other one is the video chat. And if you can at all avoid it, avoid YouTube. It's just not high quality. There are video places that you can go in and you can conference through video, and it works quite well. The one thing there, and you've seen it a million times, when people are separated from one another, there's time lag. So you have to make sure that people finish what they're going to say before you start speaking. Otherwise, you'll start stepping all over each other. And so those are some general things that will help you. Interview questions. The way you prepare for interview questions, I don't care what question. And before I say that, let me give you the rule. The rule is this. In an interview, the answer to all the questions are the same. And I love this because people say, what in the world is that idiot talking about? They are the same to this extent. They are opportunities to talk about things of interest to the interviewer. What is of interest to the interviewer? Those things that were in the position description, the things that were on the website, the things that are in industry publications. So a question is an opportunity to talk about things of interest to the interviewer. What happens if you get a question that's kind of out in left field, that's unrelated to anything you've been asked? Go ahead and answer it. You don't have to have a pat answer for everything. So after that, you revisit the map between the position description and your experiences. Gee, they want project management. Now I remember that when I first started out, I had some good experiences in project management, and I did this and this and this, and I accomplished these things. There was a major victory that I had 3 years ago. So you recall those things that map to the things that are in the position description and on the website and in the company literature. And that's your map. That is your basic guide to the interview. One thing about interview, you'll be nervous. The antidote to nervousness. You don't want to be completely calm. It's all right to be fired up and to go in there and to try to do your best. That kind of nervous energy has a lot of positive things to it, because that'll come across, and I don't like this, but people will say to me, I can feel the passion in your voice for the subject that you're talking about. Well, I think passion is a very dangerous thing, and you read that in the book. I talk about that a little bit. That's a lousy way to choose a career. But people will say that. That comes from the confidence in knowing what you are talking about. You remember the one test you went into that you studied your rear end off for, and there was nobody that could convince you were not ready. That's the way you prep for an interview. When you hear those magic words come up, those key words during the interview, they represent opportunities for you to talk about things that are of importance to the company. And don't be afraid to rehearse the linkages. You sit down in front of a mirror and you say, they talk about project management. What comes up when I'm talking about project management? Well, here are 3 things that kind of come up. Because and when things are based on your experiences, and they are true, and I add that big, when they are true, they're really easy to recall and easy to remember. And let's say you forget one, and it was one that was really important. I got news for you. I will take a cheat sheet to the interview. And I'll say, here, I've written down some things that I just want to make sure I get in. So I'm going to put my a reminder to me that I've put in order here. And so in case I forget something, I'll remind myself to go back to it. To me, that's a source of strength. I don't know anyone who would be unimpressed with your having and displaying a cheat sheet. It shows you prepared. Now, let's say you suspect that that's inappropriate. Okay, I buy that. Don't take it out. But I have yet, in all my years of experience, which doesn't mean I know the universe of things that are appropriate, but I've never seen a cheat sheet be viewed as anything other than positive. It becomes a negative if you got to sit there and search for stuff on the cheat sheet. So you should be very parsimonious in what you put on it, and also make sure the typing is big enough so you can read it. That's another thing. All right. Preparing for the interviews. Think about what is of value to the employer, how your experiences map to what it is that they value. Listen for their words to describe the value they want, and then use their words to describe what you did. We need someone to come in and restore the credibility of the unit. Answer. I've dealt with that several times during my career, and it largely has worked out very well. And it's important. I'd like to talk to you about that. You're home free. So that's how you prepare. Don't be afraid to sit down in front of a mirror. Don't be afraid to sit down with friends or your spouse or your significant other or whoever and go through this. And what you'll find is that the more you go through it, the better you'll get and the less you'll have to prepare. Now, most interviewers are not experts. That doesn't mean they don't know what they're doing. What that means is they cannot tell you that there is a valid, statistically significant link between the questions they ask, the answers they get, the person who eventually gets hired, and their ability to do the job. It's mostly gut feel on their part. They are not experts, never will be, and never were intended to be. So your job is this is an interesting paradox, is to impress someone that doesn't know what the hell they're doing. And I say that kindly. They do know what they're doing. They just can't prove it. And what they will do is they will have your resume in front of them, and they will use your resume to structure their questions. And most of them will just go straight down and they'll say, look, tell me about this. Now, can you imagine if you've already put in the time on your resume, you already know what's there, everything that's there is there for a purpose, and they're going to use what you prepared as their guide to find out whether or not you can do their job. And then you're going to give them information in the language that they use to describe the problem they're trying to solve and the skills that they need, that someone needs to solve it. If they use your resume as a guide, and I have yet to find anyone that hasn't done that, especially in one-on-one interviews, then you are a long way toward success when you have structured your resume carefully to make it about them and not about you. Another thing, understand, not all questions are intended to be equal. And there's no way that's even close. I mean, people who interview, they'll throw in stuff, tell me about your hobbies, do this. So trying to prepare for casual, unintended, non-directional questions, to me, is a waste of time. You can't anticipate every question that's going to be asked, but you can prepare for everything that's relevant to the job at hand. And that's what I'm trying to encourage you to do.
Bill?
And as I said, yes.
I'm sorry, in relation to that, can you just shed some quick light on how people can tell when a 60-second, 2-minute, 5-minute, or 10-minute answer is in order? Because I see a lot of people that get stuck on some questions that may not have a lot of value, and it becomes a 20-minute answer.
Yeah, that's right. Boy, and here is the rule. the more the question strikes at the heart of the problem they're trying to solve, the more time you are allowed to give it. And even then, more than a minute answer is probably too long. It is not, all questions are not equal, and not all questions are an invitation to ramble on. The classic one is, did you have any trouble getting here today? And I have seen people say, God, I got on the subway and you're not there for that. That's not the deal. And I would just go past that one. I'd say, it was fine. No one, unless it's a question about your ability to follow bad instructions, and I don't know of any interviews like that. There may be some out there. Go ahead and flunk them. It's okay. Run the risk by saying, no, it was fine. Just leave it alone. And this is why practice is important. Keep most answers as short as you possibly can. And when you stop and give someone else a chance, you can say, did you want me to expand on that? Or was that sufficient? If they say expand, that's an invitation to talk a little longer. If they say it was sufficient, you've given them what they need. Conciseness and brevity are values that are worth holding on to. And you can be concise and you can be brief the more you have mapped what it is that you have done to what they say they need. And then after a while, preparing for interviews will get to be very, very, very easy. And of course, tell the truth. I used to say lies get inconsistent and they're hard to remember. When you tell the truth, there's usually only one version of it, and it's easier to remember. And someone reminded me, it's also ethical. So I say to you, there are advantages to telling the truth. Ethics and ease of memory are two. Tough questions. Not really, but some people call these tough. What are you looking for in a salary? Stay away from it if you can. There are some companies who say, if I don't know what you're currently making, you can't be a candidate for this job. Okay, give them the salary and pass and go on. Don't even, don't spend any more time. But what you're trying to do, if you're unemployed and you feel as bad as I think you feel, or you are employed and you're trying to get the heck out of there, salary questions, what are you making, will either allow people to get you on the cheap, or they'll eliminate you from consideration because you're making too much money. That's just a risk you have to take. It's helpful if you go in, if you know what they are expecting in the way of salary, and many places will tell you that, but some won't. And I would say that the best way around that is to defer it if you can, but if you can't, just simply tell them and move on. And then here's everybody's favorite. What have you ever failed at? That is not a question about failure. That's a question about improvement. What is your weakest strength? What do you need to get better at? It is always things that you have recognized, worked at, gotten better at. And then someone will say to you, no, I mean something you still need to work at. Hey, these skills are skills in progress. And I have to work at them all the time. I don't care if it's leadership, I don't care if it's conflict resolution, I don't care if it's teamwork. I continue to work at those. I'm trying to get better and let it go. But that's usually a pretty safe way to manage those so-called tough questions. But once you put them in some kind of framework, they're not tough at all, as you can see. Why did you leave your last position? I noticed you've been out of work for a while. Why? look, we've had enough experience as a society now and in this economy with people being out of work. You don't have to apologize. But anytime you're out of work, we're going to talk about managing gaps in employment. Assume for a minute that you are out of work January 2nd, which means you worked in 2013, and you're out of work until for that whole year. But you find a job on December 31st. That's not any absence in the job market. Why? Because jobs are expressed in terms of years of duration. So if they're expressed in terms of years of duration, you don't give them months. You just say, I was employed in 2012. My next job came, or 2013 to 2000 and whatever. I had this job. You don't have to volunteer months of employment. I hope that's clear to everybody. I talk about it a little bit in the book. Most people grab hold of that one pretty fast. You've been out of work for quite a while. I feel like when people ask that question, I feel like saying, so what's new? There are a lot of people who've been out of work for quite a while. Look, in this economy, being out of work is no sin. It doesn't, if there is one thing I would like to get across to everybody, the desire to change jobs, to better yourself, is a virtue, not a sin. And the fact that you have been out of work is a circumstance, not a shortcoming. Don't feel bad about it. Get your chin off the ground because you're going to need to. You see, you've been out of work for a while. Say, well, what happened? Why did you leave your last position? Well, it didn't work out. We had a general layoff. I thought it was time to move on because there was no real opportunity for advancement. Whatever reason you think is reasonable and relates closely to the truth, give. It's no sin. And it's okay. And it's frustrating. I was just yesterday, I swear I was reduced to tears. Right in front of this woman, she must have thought I was nuts. I was going from Lowe's to a store that we have here called Fresh Market. And in both instances, people that I had gotten to know because I interact with them as I go and purchase stuff, and they were very good people. And in both instances, I found out they were leaving. I said, gee, why are you leaving? They said, well, they cut my hours back to 20 hours. And she said, I can't live off of 20 hours a week. I've got to find more work. A student said to me, I pay for my education semester by semester, and I can't afford 20 hours a week. And so I said to myself, why are these stores cutting these people back? And I'm not going to get into, trust me, I'm not getting into a political thing. They are managing their cost because it is so expensive and cutthroat out there that their responsibility is to their shareholders and to their owners. It is not to their employees. Their reaction is, if we don't manage this cost, we're not going to have any employees. So we need to manage our costs. And someone who is on our payroll during the course of the year too long, we add 40% benefit costs to what we have to pay them. And we're not going to do it. And so when you're out there looking for another job, I say that's okay. Don't, you may not want the company to know because, companies know they're out there for themselves. They don't take it quite so kindly when you go out there for yourself. So don't worry about that. Questions you would ask. This is the weakest part of my book. I intend to fix that because this can be a much more important time than I have given it room. Don't forget, this is a two-way street. Just like they want to know whether or not you can do the job, you want to know whether or not they can do the job you need doing for you. So this is a time that you ask questions to make sure that you are squared away in terms of who they are, what they do, how they do it, how often they give performance reviews, whatever you need to ask to clarify. You need to make sure this is a good fit with you. You also can use it as an opportunity to clarify something you said earlier that you think didn't go down quite so well, but you didn't explain it as well as you should have. So the time to ask questions is to go, you can say, well, let me go back to a question you asked earlier, and you can answer that question again. You can revisit a thought you didn't have a chance to finish because the interview rushed forward. And you can also reposition something that may have been misunderstood. So practice those questions to the extent that you can. They will occur naturally to you once you've done your homework on understanding what's important to them. Okay? Let me skip by this. It's getting a little bit late. Try to stay away from phony questions that show you to be the smartest person in the world. Gee, I read in the latest edition of the Wall Street Journal that you guys are having trouble with X. This is not the time for arrogance. It's the time for honesty, straightforwardness, and appropriate questions. If you've done your homework, you can say, look, I read this. To what extent is that true? Can you comment on that? It's something I'm very interested in. But make it sincere and not blowhard. And then it's okay to end with, I've got everything I need. This is a tremendous opportunity. I really appreciate it. Is there something you're still wondering about in terms of my candidacy? Be careful when you go out there on the internet, because I've gone out there and I've looked at kind of the list of questions that they encourage you to ask. There's a lot of bad advice out there. Make sure that what you ask is relevant to the situation. As I say, don't be a smart aleck. Negotiating, my favorite topic, and I want to spend just a little bit of time on this. You may think that because it's such a tight job market that you don't have a chance to negotiate. You get plenty of opportunity to negotiate. I'm going to give you what the basic approach is. Give you some information on knowing when to negotiate, which is probably the most important single rule you can follow. And then I'm going to go through some of the rules, some of the ones that are what I think are important. Again, though, the importance of each of these comes from you and not from me. It's about you, not about me. So what I think, to a certain extent, is irrelevant. Basic approach. Understand your priorities. Way back when you start your job search, make yourself a list, and I'll show you one on the next slide. A list of things you just gotta have in another job. A list of things you'd like to have, and those things that would be nice but you can really do without them. And then divide those into what I call a flat sort. Equal number in each category. Because if you don't do that and you lump them all into one category, it doesn't force you to make a choice. And it's not nearly as helpful. And the importance of putting down your priorities isn't for you to, quote, stick to them. It's that when they change, you know it. I'll give you one that changes. Many people start out saying that the one thing the highest priority on their list, especially if a significant other is involved or family, I don't want to move. I want to stay right here. I want my spouse to be able to go and do what they did yesterday, and I don't want to inconvenience the family or my significant other because I need a new job. And that's the one that changes the most, because when you are staring long-term unemployment in the face, people back off that. It's okay. If you got to back off it, you got to back off of it. But know what your priorities are going in. And this is kind of what it might look like. your must-haves, you like to have, and you can do without. And you begin to understand what's important to you. Then when later on you'll say, now did I get what I needed? And that's when you get down to knowing when to negotiate. You negotiate when you're at your peak of power. When is that? That's after you and the hiring organization have already agreed on most things, or the most important things. You want a job, and they're offering you a job. In between when they offer and when you accept, you have your maximum ability to negotiate. That is not the time to act like a bull in a china shop. I got these guys. I tell you, I know they really want me. Be careful. You're at your maximum, whatever that maximum is. It is acceptable to say, hey, look, this is terrific. I'm glad you guys have made me an offer. Give me some period of time to sleep on it. It could be overnight. When would you like me to get back to you? Someone says to you, you have to take it now or leave it. Be very careful. Those are people without honor. Don't trust them. Anybody who will not have the decency to give you an opportunity to reflect on a very important decision, I'm not sure is worth working for. You have to decide that. But you are at your most powerful, because you can say to people, hey, did I get what I wanted? I got my list of things I really wanted, and I can now go back and negotiate. And those things that are on the bottom of my list, I can give those away and give the appearance of being gracious. No, it's okay, this, that, and the other. Or if something isn't on there, I can say, gee, I've worked all my career to get, and this is big because this happens a lot, to get a 4 weeks vacation, and now I'm back to 1? Is there anything you can do about that? And most companies will give you what you had coming in. But if you don't ask for it, and you sign on the dotted line, you're done. 7 quick rules for negotiating. Never turn down an offer, a job before it's offered. You say, nobody does that. They do it all the time. And they do it because they get scared. Here's a job I'm applying for that's beneath what I wanted anyway. I'll be damned if I'm going to stand around and tell me I'm not qualified for this job. Or they got somebody who's more qualified for a job I did 10 years ago. I'm not going to stay around for that. Mistake. Saw a situation once where the job was a director job. The other person had worked all their lives to get to be a vice president. They said, I'm not going back. It makes no sense. Recommended someone else for the job. Someone else got the job. Found out 2 months later, the job was repositioned as a vice president's job. Well, how did that happen, they wondered. Because it was always destined to go there. They just needed to find the right person. And if they needed to give them a VP job to get them on board, they would, especially if they found the right person. But they turned it down before it was offered. Third-party negotiators, especially headhunters. Headhunters, regardless of what you think of them, are great third-party negotiators because their interest, even though they work for the company, their interest at some point is very much aligned with yours. That is, if they find someone that they want to give the job to, all they're interested in doing is closing the deal. It is a great place to raise questions that might otherwise be sensitive. They'll help negotiate you through it. They don't want you to lose the job either. They want to close it and move on to the next job. And I have found headhunters to be particularly effective as third-party negotiators. Generally speaking, the higher up you are in the food chain in terms of jobs, the more you need outside counsel. Not to do the negotiating for you necessarily, but to walk you through the legal ramifications. For example, I've known people that have negotiated their severance packages before coming on board. And their severance packages have included things like use of the company plane, continued use of a company car, uh, bonuses, prepaid bonuses, all kinds of stuff. And an employment lawyer is a great aid. Be careful about putting a lawyer between you and the people you are negotiating with. There are some places in which that's useful, in sports in particular. There are other places where it's considered offensive. Get it in writing. Not because that's a legal document that necessarily helps you. I mean, most offers are written and they specifically say this is not an implied contract. All we are telling you is this is what we intend to do. And they skinny it down to make sure it doesn't say anything. What you really want to do with that getting in writing is to make sure they understand what it is you understand is contained in the job offer. And if it's not there, you need to go back and say, well, wasn't there a provision in here about this? Didn't we talk about that? And so you need to do it that way. Hard to do, know the competition. We get down to two biggies. Underplay your hand. This is where your list comes in. I've already mentioned it. There are some people who negotiate as if they are trying to get the last dime on the table. My experience is that's a mistake. Your list of priorities provides you with an opportunity to be gracious, to give away what is things that are relatively less important to you. Notice I didn't say unimportant. I said relatively less important. And finally, this is a big one. Under-promise and over-deliver. To get a job, you go in attack mode. I can do that. I can do that. I can do that. When you get the job, the number one derailer of executives in particular is over-promising and under-delivering. Rather than staying on the road of, I can do that, I can do that, be moderate and temperate in the commitments you make, and then deliver against those commitments on time and under budget. That is very important. That will keep you from getting derailed. Ongoing career management. You work hard to get a job, and I would be very surprised if this didn't happen to a lot of you. And you get unexpectedly let go. It is in the nature of the job market. And here is the kind of unarticulated downside. You can always blame it on market conditions, we're restructuring, or whatever have you. The truth is that we've gone from a moral code of you don't lay workers off, they have families too. We've gone from that to I will do whatever is necessary to preserve the profitability of my enterprise. I'm not throwing stones. I think that is the nature of the beast and the nature of the situation we are in today. But for goodness sake, do yourself a favor. Don't beat yourself up about somebody else's values. Get your chin off the ground, and those same skills that you used to create value, use those same skills, the value creation skills, to seek out your next job or career opportunity. Use it as a launching pad for a new position. In my last position, I was able to. And then when you're in between jobs, and I didn't finish this thought earlier, stay connected to the job market. I have a chapter in there, the best way to re-enter the job market is to never leave it. So why have you been out of work so long? Well, I've been out of work. It's a tough job market out there, and I'm getting back in, but I haven't been taking it easy. Let me talk to you about some things I've done to improve my skills while I've been out. And I have a whole list of things that you can do. You can go back to school. You can get the variety of ways you can stay connected. You can do volunteer work. You can take courses. And as evidence, it's helpful to start blogging about some of these things. Lessons learned while unemployed or whatever have you. But you can stay connected to your profession. You use your current position description in an ongoing way to continue to create value. Hone old skills and develop new ones. Here is the big one, especially for you young people out there. The whole mentoring process is misunderstood. People think, say, gee, where will I go to get a mentor? How can I get a mentor? The misunderstanding is that mentoring, and pardon the use of the big word, I'll break it down. Mentoring is a symbiotic process. It's a two-way street. And people who do mentoring are on the lookout for people who can give them good information and who are great project folks, because you can't find enough of them. So when you are looking for a mentor and you want someone to mentor you, ask not what a mentor can do for you, but what you can do for a mentor, and then bring that to them each and every day. I went to two people that I used as role models for this blog piece that I did that's on my website. At least I think it's there. I haven't read it in a long time. And a guy by the name of Kevin Campbell, who was the head of business process outsourcing, and then later on became the head of technology for Accenture. Hugely big guy. And then another guy, Jess Womack, who was just retired from being the Inspector General of the Los Angeles County School District, which I think is the largest school district in the world, in the country. And I said, guys, separately, I said, I've talked to you guys over time, and this is what I understand you to want in subordinates. I've learned this from you. So I wrote the piece and I sent it to him. I said, would you comment on whether or not whether I have a correct understanding of what it is that you want? They were so excited about what they read that they shared it with their subordinates and said, if you want to get ahead in my organization, this is what you have to do. And so I am convinced that there's not enough written or understood about mentoring. Formal programs are fine, but too many of them miss the mark. They get you focused upward rather than with your peers, and peer relationships are very important. And mentoring relationships that occur naturally are much more efficacious, and again, pardon the use of the big word, much more effective than those that occur naturally. So in terms of your ongoing career management, that's something I commend to your attention. I think I must be at the end because I can't get to anymore. So there are my thoughts on the how to prepare for an interview and a job and the new job market. I haven't seen these thoughts many other places. I commend them to your attention. I know they work. Are there any questions?
Bill, I saw some great questions come through in the remaining 15 minutes. We'll try to get to some of them. I do want to remind people, Monday we have the Q&A session with Bill on content relating to today's discussion from noon to 1 p.m. Eastern Time at this same link. Before we get into those questions, though, when you were speaking about people worrying about their gaps and trying to talk about what they may have been doing in time during the time while they weren't working, you and I have talked offline a bit about people feeling that for experience to be valuable to employers, they have to have been paid for it somehow, and that's of course not true. And I'm thinking that a number of the people that I work with feel they don't have anything to bring to the table because maybe they have been volunteering for the past year and they're not sure that that's as valuable to an employer if they had gained the skill in a situation where they had been compensated. Do you find that people struggle with that on your end?
What I find is that people who think that way present themselves that way, and that's a problem. I would say if you tee it up properly, someone says to you, God, you've been unemployed. Why have you been unemployed so long? Or, what's the deal? You say, well, I've been unemployed but not inactive. I'd like to talk to you about what I've done to improve my skills during this period of time. While I've looked not just for any job, but for the right job, like the one you have. Look at the spin on it. It's a lot different from, gee, I haven't done much of value and I kind of know it. No, it depends on how you treat that question is a reflection of how you treat yourself and what you think of yourself. So do it on purpose and do it with some level of aggression. And when you do that and you think, you say, gee, it's right. I'm in accounting and I learned something about value-based accounting that I didn't know. And I volunteered and did some of that for this organization, or lawyers in particular. What I did is I did some pro bono work in areas where I needed additional experience. Look at how powerfully that plays out. So I would encourage you to A, not feel that way, and B, do something about it.
Bill, James raised a great question a couple of times through the presentation about recommendations from books or experts on what in essence feels like embellishing at times. For example, if the title that you had in a previous job might not be the type of title people would be familiar with, do you change it on your resume, or are you calling yourself a CEO of your own company that you were maybe doing out of your home that may be small scale in between jobs? When is embellishment good and when do you want to be careful?
Well, I'm not sure embellishment in that sense is ever terrifically positive. I mean, I think you really need to be proud of what you do and call yourself what you are and make it as positive as you can. But to say I'm CEO of my own firm probably is a little bit precocious and in the category of inappropriate embellishment. Look at it this way. Look at what people call themselves. And ask yourself the question, does it feel like embellishment to you? Look at what you call yourself and ask, does it feel like embellishment to me? And if it does, try and find another way. Now just hang with me just for a second. I would try to find another way because you are then practicing a skill that you're going to get better at. And once you learn to appreciate what it is that you're doing, and you describe it in a way that provides value to the person who has the vacancy, then you will be onto something. You can't get there through embellishment alone. Go ahead, Lisa.
Another question, two questions have come in relating to individuals who have been out of the workforce, perhaps for while raising their children, and trying to come up with relevant experiences or value when maybe what they've been doing hasn't been part of the working world.
Well, and my goodness. Get the book and go to, I want to say chapter 7. Just a minute. I don't have a copy of the book here with me. But look, let's say if you have a degree and I'll just assume that you are a professional of some kind, and you've been raising kids, and you're wondering how to get back in the workforce. Well, if rule 1 is the best way to re-enter the workforce is to never leave it, the second rule is the best way to re-enter the workforce is to re-enter it, and to re-enter it working on relevant job skills. And there are a variety of ways you can do that. Unless you're in a desperate situation where you need a job tomorrow, go back and pick up a couple of courses in whatever you need to pick them up in at the local community college. Graduate school is great because there are very well-known graduate schools. I think Harvard is one. I think Penn may be one that understand, holy smokes, we've really gotten smart. Women leave the workforce to help raise their kids because they are better caregivers than men. And why should they be penalized for that? So there are programs out there, and I mentioned one in the book. I interviewed a woman who runs such a firm. There are graduate schools out there that will let people back in. You can get connected to a professor. You can help a professor do some work, and then all of a sudden you say, well, what have you been doing? Well, I've been raising kids. Well, no, let me talk to you about what I'm doing in terms of skill development. I've worked with Dr. So-and-so on the following 2 or 3 things and made sure that my skills were current. And you begin to see ways to re-enter the workforce. But you can't go from, think of running a 100-yard dash. You can't go from a standstill in terms of one career to full-blown speed just by pivoting. You can't do that. So ramp up. Get back on the on-ramp to jobs by volunteering, by going back to school, by beginning to reconnect with the profession in some way.
Completely different course. We had some questions early on from Anthony asking about how often are you seeing companies doing the background checks and the credit checks? And of course, in this type of economy, and Anthony didn't ask this, but I'm tacking it on, there are a number of people whose credit might not be in good shape. Do you have any thoughts on how to navigate that?
Do what you can to get it in good shape. Now that's cheap advice. People are checking credit. I don't know what else to say to you. And so anything you can do to shed debt and to get your credit rating back up is going to be helpful. They use credit as an indicator of character. That is not fair. I'm not even sure it's legal. But that's what companies do. So if you have bad credit, it's going to hurt. If you have bad credit, you probably are going to have to take an occupational downgrade if it's seriously bad. Seriously bad would be bankruptcies and just a very low credit score. And the occupational downgrade puts you into situations where they are less concerned about that. But the trick is to get back into the job market and to begin to establish a track record that you can stand on. So that's kind of one piece of advice. I have a section back there that almost no one's ever read called, I think it's in the appendix, called, how do you manage your money? And I don't know that it's applicable to everybody, but it might be worth it to take a look at that. Because money management has gotten to the point to where it's important because so many people are out of work. I'm done.
We've got a few more minutes left. Another quick question that we can work in. In the coaching of the references, in some situations, companies are asking for references right with the initial application when you may not know a lot about what the job involves. What's your thought on how to know who to include in those references or how to get more information from a company so you can best guess which references to use?
If you have applied for a job and they want references right away, be aware of what they're doing. They are saying to you, we don't want to really invest a lot of resources in hiring this person. I mean, that's the message. So what we're going to do is look for signals that this person is okay. So what you do is you get as much information out of the position description as you can, then ask your very best contacts to stand by you as a reference for these jobs, not knowing if they're going to contact them or not. Give them some indication of what the job is about and what they are likely to look for. And that's the way you do it. If they want written references, which I would doubt, the only place I know that wants written references up front is Teach for America. But I don't know of anybody else. It's people they want to contact. But that's the way I would go about it.
Okay, our last question, we got 3 more minutes, and I do want to real quick make that reminder plug that we will be back in action in this link Monday from noon to 1, or people are welcome to email Bill directly at his email, which I have in the chat field now. Eunice from Capital Area District Library would just like a little more clarification as our final question on what should be on the interview cheat sheet.
Two things primarily should be on the interview cheat sheet. The link between what they value and what experiences you have to speak to that value. So out to the left would be what they're looking for. Out to the right would be just a couple of words to remind you of what you've done in the past that links to that. So it's not a complete answer spelled out. It's just a memory jogger. So you have on the left what's important to the company. On the right, what you've done about that. And then the other thing that belongs on a cheat sheet is stuff that you know when you get in the heat of battle, you are likely to forget. This will be stuff maybe that you did, long time ago, or volunteer work that you've done that's related, or you picked up from inside the company that they seem to be interested in these kinds of things, even though it's not on the position description. And so you can do that. But these are not whole sentences. They're just concepts and memory joggers to have you talk about things. Doesn't tell you what to say, only reminds you to say them.
Okay, thank you for that. In closing, first of all, thank you to everybody who participated. You hung with us. We had 2 series with 90 minutes apiece. Great questions, great interaction in between the 2 events through email and through our Q&A. This means a lot to us. And to Bill, thank you so much for the giving of your time. This is absolutely in line with Spartans Helping Spartans. The initial thought was that you would help, of course, with a webinar, and you've gone on with so much access to you from the people who have participated. To return the favor, for those of you who participated in this event and can carve out time to do so, we would love to hear your feedback. Bill would like to, as he mentioned, create this as a service to other alumni associations, and we would like to help by really collecting some feedback from you as to what value it brought and why you think it was good for Michigan State's Alumni Association to offer this to you as a Spartan and as to and to the community at large. So if you can help with that, we'd appreciate it. Bill, I can't thank you enough, and I look forward to the final Q&A session this coming Monday. For those of you who are interested, I will leave this web room open for a few minutes so you can capture the links to part 1 and to the Q&A session that have been included in the chat area. And if you're interested in the link to the recording of today's event, please email me at lisap@msu.edu, and I will get it to you right away as we figure out where we want to house it permanently. Bill, any closing remarks?
Yeah, did you tell them where to go make evaluation comments?
I mentioned that I have collected a number of people's emails through the reminder process. If I don't have your email and you are open to participating in the evaluation, please send me a quick email at lisap.msu.edu, and I will add you to that list. Your feedback would be greatly appreciated.
Terrific. Okay. Very good. I enjoyed it. Go State. And these are tough times. I think you're on the right track to figuring out what to do about them. So, Godspeed.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.